All right, it's not Deja Vu, guys. It's Blue Jean Cables at another audiophile show. It was CEDIA the last time I saw you guys. Is this your first time being at this show, Capital Audio Fest?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've done a lot of these type shows, but Capital we've never done before, other than the listening room. We were in the listening room, but not out here.
Yeah, and you got the Iconoclast. Yes. Yep. All right. Yeah, for those who haven't been watching, after CEDIA, and you had this very innovative new design, the twin star quad parallel run speaker cable, and then we did what you do for a lot of companies, make a OEM work, and basically we created my own little label and brand for fun, and I put those cables in, and they're phenomenal. I mean, like we talked about briefly some of the things that I heard, and you were saying that's the common, the continuity of music, that just a little bit of change. You know, I don't think you're going to ever hear dramatic differences with speaker cables unless you're having defective ones and really poor connections. But the subtle differences are sometimes important, and that extra continuity in the sound that seems more real, like live versus choppy stereo.
Right.
And that's an exaggeration of the difference. But you were saying lowering the inductance is something that usually yields that kind of result, is that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately with speaker cables, what you're trying to do is control the impedance curve, right? Because when you're matching the speaker to an amp, you're thinking about the impedance. The cable is a part of that system too.
Right.
And it's actually a curve, right? It's dependent on the frequency. Something you've talked about on your channel before, it's not necessarily always about frequency response, it's about like time-based distortion. It's about
so many other things.
Matching.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other considerations. And so getting that inductance number lower in a way that doesn't impact other numbers negatively ends up mathematically getting you a flat impedance curve, which is going to make your speaker cable amp system behave in a way in which ultimately is representing your music more accurately.
Yeah, and you know, if parts matter inside equipment, it should matter outside the equipment, and this is actually a pretty significant part because it's a long run, often case speaker cable, so it does make sense to sometimes invest in speaker cables, but you don't have to spend a fortune. The speaker run, I don't even, what does it retail for, the new twin?
I think that what I sent you would go for, I don't know, it was probably less than $400.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I mean, that's, customized jacketing and all that kind of, that is just phenomenal. And so you don't have to spend 10,000, six figures on speaker cables, but should you definitely invest good money in them? I definitely would say so. And especially your connection method. Do you have an example of the...
Yeah, so these are all the ultrasonic welding.
Ultrasonic welding.
To get the actual connector on. So we use basically high frequency vibrations. And what's going to happen is it creates heat, but only in a small area, so it creates an actual weld.
Really?
But it doesn't melt everything, because if you tried to solder this, you'd have to get all of this metal hot enough to accept solder, and then everything around it is going to melt. So it doesn't work. And then, of course, the locking banana is the other part of that. This is going to create the lowest contact resistance of any connector I've ever measured.
Yeah, people sometimes have had preconceived notions against bananas, but this kind of locking banana, I think, is superior to almost anything.
Yeah, my test numbers bear that out for sure.
Is that right? Because you can measure the difference.
Yeah. When you're looking at the resistance numbers, I can take, and I did this recently on our channel, I did multiple different cables, or everything else is exactly the same. I just tried the different connectors out, and you can see those resistance numbers change.
Is that right? Okay. So this would be, if your components can accept this locking bananas, probably your preferred choice over spades or other options.
It's going to have the best numbers right off the bat, and also over time, because this is, even if this wears down, you can just tighten it more.
Yeah,
so you can always reseat your connectors, which I recommend people do.
At least yearly or something, and cleaning maybe.
And you can just retighten it, and you're back to square one again, which you can't do with other types of bananas, because they're always
whatever you got out of the factory. Let's go ahead and show the prices, because you offer obviously speaker cables, XLRs, RCAs. What's the difference between generation 1 and 2?
The biggest difference for the speaker wire is the number of conductors and the size of the conductors.
Okay.
So the
You can contact me
Gen
here
1
as well. This
is
is my Iconoclast card, but
has
you know,
12
we're just a division of Blue Jeans.
and this is 24, and then obviously smaller wires. So that gets the plate area larger because you can see it's like longer this way, and it gets the you know, it's a lot more work for me, obviously, to, you know, I got to strip twice as many wires. It's 384 wires for a single pair.
Wow.
But you do get the inductance number lower, and so the impedance curve is even flatter with this one. I mean, these are great cables. You know, I would always recommend these to anyone, and this is just, Galen wanted to see like how far he could take this, and I don't think he's going to go any farther than this because you can't really, the machines just will not make this any bigger or make these wires any smaller without the whole thing falling to pieces.
And what's also, you know, high end can be looks and construction quality, connector quality, but being able, to me, it's high end to be able to provide this kind of information on your cable at this length. What is your capacitance? Because these things do matter in terms of, if you are going to hear a difference, usually it can be traced back to not voodoo, it can be traced back to actual measurements.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, that's why I test every assembly, because when you're buying stuff, you know, you look at the spec and that's what you want to buy, but you also want to know that this particular assembly is going to be that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, at this length is the most important thing, because these parameters, you know, multiply per foot.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, great stuff. Like I said, big fan of very few cable companies do I endorse, and especially at the budget realm, that for most people's systems, this is all you're going to need.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's fancy ones that I like a lot, like the Via Blue and Acoustic, which also use science in their designs. But there's quite a few out there that have no or very little or skeptical exotic physics that are kind of that aren't really it's more for jewelry purposes than for actual performance. So yeah, kudos to you guys, and we're gonna probably do a Zoom interview when things calm down and we can do a formal.
Stuff going on,
I know. I got so much on my plate, but definitely we're gonna get together soon.
Awesome.
So stay tuned, guys, for a lot more.